The casket looked so small, far too small for the weight it carried. That was the very first clear thought that broke through the fog in my head as I stood in the cemetery, watching them lower my little boy into the ground. My son, my only child. His name was Liam Parker, and he was just 9 years old. My hands shook uncontrollably. I tried to press them flat against the skirt of my black dress, gripping the fabric until my knuckles turned white. I shoved them into my coat pockets, hoping no one would see the trembling. But nothing worked. My body felt like it was betraying me, just like life itself had. Tears streamed down my face, quiet, endless rivers I didn't bother wiping away anymore. Each slow whir of the pulley system lowering Liam's casket into the earth tied my stomach in knots so tight. I thought I might collapse right there. My knees buckled slightly, and the cemetery worker gave me a sympathetic nod, waiting for some sign that I was ready. But how could anyone ever be ready for this moment? 8 months earlier, the doctors had finally put a name to the monster that was draining my boy's strength. They called it a rare blood disorder, as if giving it a label somehow made it less terrifying. It didn't. When the doctor explained the treatment, I could hardly breathe. My son, though, sat up straighter, his small face serious, his eyes focused. He had asked in a steady voice, "Will it hurt?" "Sometimes," the doctor admitted honestly. "But we'll do everything we can to help." Liam nodded. He didn't flinch, didn't cry. He just accepted it. That was who he was, brave in a way that even grown men struggle to be. The months that followed were brutal. 8 months of needles, blood transfusions, and pills with names that twisted my tongue. Fevers that left his body trembling beneath hospital blankets. Nights where I sat beside his bed, counting his shallow breaths, praying to a God who stayed silent. Not once did Liam complain. Not once did he ask, "Why me?" Even when his body shook with fever or his veins ached from yet another 4, he would look up at me with those big brown eyes, the same as his father's, and whisper, "It's okay. Mom, don't worry." But now here I was, standing by a grave that would never be big enough to hold all that love, all that bravery. And I was standing alone, the ache of that absence cut just as sharply as the loss itself. My parents should have been there. My sister Olivia, who had sworn she'd always be by my side, should have been there. Even Rachel, my best friend since 3rd grade, the one who sat with me through my divorce, who swore she was like family, wasn't standing with me now. Instead, I only had Mrs. Green, my elderly neighbor, whose weathered hand rested softly on my arm. She was the only one who showed up. For over a year, she had brought home-cooked meals when I was too tired from hospital visits to cook. She had babysat Liam when I needed a moment to shower or nap. She had loved him like her own grandchild. Meanwhile, my parents and my sister were celebrating. Almost out of habit, I pulled out my phone, though I knew I'd regret it. And just like that, Olivia's Instagram feed popped up. Post after post showed her engagement party at the lavish Bayview Grand Hotel, sparkling champagne glasses, twinkling lights, my parents smiling at her side. My sister in a glittering dress, diamond flashing on her hand. The timestamp made me feel sick. Posted just 20 minutes ago. Which meant while I stood over my son's coffin, they were raising glasses of champagne. While I whispered goodbye, they were laughing. Mrs. Green's voice pulled me out of the haze. "Are you holding up okay, dear?" she asked gently. I could only whisper. They didn't come. Not one of them. My throat burned as I thought about Liam's laugh, his real laugh before the illness. The kind that bubbled up from his belly, uncontrollable and pure. I remembered how he declared at just 7 years old that he wanted to be a doctor to fix kids like me someday. I remembered how he insisted on wearing superhero pajamas to chemo. Because, as he said, superheroes are brave, even when they're scared. "He loved you more than anything in this world," Mrs. Green said softly. I nodded, clutching at that truth. Before his father, Eric Parker, moved overseas for work, he had set up a college trust fund for Liam $850,000. "If anything ever happens," Eric had told me, "you're the one who will handle it. You'll know how to honor him." Neither of us could have guessed how soon that promise would matter. As I stood at Liam's graveside, part of me wanted to call my parents and scream until my voice gave out. How could they have chosen Olivia's party over their grandson's funeral? But another part of me felt nothing at all, numb, empty, as though grief had hollowed me out completely. 18 months I had fought for my son's life. 18 months of sleeping in hard hospital chairs, memorizing medical terms, and begging doctors to listen when something was wrong. And now it was over. There was nothing left to fight for. My phone buzzed. My mother's name flashed on the screen. The message was short. We need to talk. Bring the trust documents tomorrow. My chest tightened. They hadn't come to the funeral. They hadn't even said they were sorry. But now? Now they were asking about the trust fund. I stared at the words until they blurred. I typed back, I'm burying my son today. I can't talk about paperwork right now. Her reply came instantly. Don't be dramatic, Hannah. This is important for the whole family. The whole family. The same family that couldn't spare 2 hours to say goodbye to Liam. The weight of it all settled over me, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't just about money. This was about the very last thing I had of my son. His legacy. His future that would never happen. And I realized, standing there in the cold cemetery air, that I was on my own. My parents, Olivia, even Rachel, they were united, coordinated, planning something. Mrs. Green must have noticed the shift in my face. What is it? She asked. I showed her the text. I saw her eyes harden, her lips press into a thin line. Oh, sweetheart, she said. They can't possibly think. I cut off the thought. I switched off my phone completely. This moment wasn't theirs. This moment belonged to Liam. The cemetery worker stepped forward hesitantly. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we need to finish the service. I stared at the casket, still suspended above the open grave. Was I really supposed to just walk away? To leave him there? My body refused to move. Mrs. Green intervened firmly. Give her a moment. She's saying goodbye to her boy. The man nodded, stepping back respectfully. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Liam's favorite action figure, the one he carried to every hospital visit. Kneeling, I placed it gently on top of his casket. I'll protect what's yours, I whispered, my voice shaking. I promise. As I stood, something inside me shifted. Through the fog of grief, a small spark of determination lit up. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing for certain, they would not take my son's legacy. Not without a fight. The next morning dawned gray and wet, drizzle streaking across my windshield as I drove toward my parents' home in Maplewood Hills. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. Every mile closer to their house made my stomach twist tighter. I couldn't shake the memory of the day before me at the cemetery. Them at Olivia's party. I pulled into their driveway and saw Rachel's familiar red car parked out front. Of course, she was already inside. The front door opened before I could even knock. My father stood in the doorway, his face arranged in a mask of concern. The kind of concern that looked rehearsed, not real. Hannah, he said smoothly. Come in. We've been waiting. The living room felt more like a conference room than a family home. Olivia sat perfectly poised on the cream sofa, her blonde hair twisted into a flawless bun. Rachel sat next to her, eyes glued to her nails, suddenly fascinated by her manicure. My mother stood near the fireplace, one hand resting lightly on a framed family portrait. Smiling faces stared out from the glass, a photograph that now felt like a lie. No one said a word about Liam. No one offered condolences. Instead, my father moved straight to the mahogany coffee table, where a folder sat open, papers stacked in neat little piles. He slid the folder toward me. We need to reassign the trust, he said flatly. Olivia will serve as trustee. Sign here, and here. My hand froze. What are you talking about? Olivia leaned forward, her tone coated in fake sympathy. Hannah, you're in no condition to manage this kind of money. We're trying to help you. My mother stepped closer, her voice smooth as honey. You've never been good with finances, sweetheart. Remember that boutique you wanted to open after college? Thank goodness your father stopped you. I glanced at Rachel, hoping for some sign of support, some flicker of the friendship we once had. But she only looked away. Her silence said it all. My father tapped the papers. We've already consulted with Eric's lawyer. Given your mental state, he agrees this is the prudent move. The words felt like a punch to the gut. I picked up one of the documents. Legal jargon swam before my eyes, but one page stood out. Research notes on trust law, dated 14 months ago. Right around the time Liam first got sick. You've been planning this since he was diagnosed, I whispered. My throat tight. No one answered. Silence hung thick in the living room after my words. My parents and Olivia avoided my eyes, but the truth was already out there. I could see it written in their faces. While I had been sitting beside my son's hospital bed, clinging to hope, they had been planning for the worst. Not because they loved him. Not because they cared. But because they wanted his money. Olivia let out a long sigh, as if I was the one being difficult. You're exaggerating again, Hannah. This is exactly why we're worried. You're not thinking straight. My father slid another document across the table, his tone flat but firm. If you refuse to sign, we'll petition the court for guardianship. They'll see that grief has clouded your judgment. The words chilled me to my core. Guardianship. They weren't just after Liam's trust fund. They wanted control of me. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. You never even visited him, I said, my voice rising with anger. Not once in 8 months. Not a single chemo treatment. Not one night in the hospital. Olivia tossed her head back, her tone dripping with impatience. We all grieve differently, Hannah. Some of us just handle it better. Her cruelty took my breath away. I reached for the folder and pulled out a blueprint that was tucked beneath the trust documents. My stomach dropped as I unfolded it. Renovation plans for Olivia's new house. $20,000 kitchen remodel. A luxury pool with a waterfall. A home theater. I slammed it onto the table. This is what you were going to use his money for? A pool, granite countertops. While Liam was fighting for his life. Olivia's cheeks flushed, but my mother stepped in quickly, smoothing over the outburst. Hannah, honey, you're emotional. We're just trying to make sure the family stays secure. I stared at her, barely able to comprehend what I was hearing. Secure? You weren't there when I begged doctors to try another treatment. You weren't there when I had to hold him down for another needle. And now you want to stand here and talk to me about security? The truth cut sharper with every word. Finally, Olivia folded her arms across her chest. Fine, you deserve to know. Robert's development company is in trouble. The wedding might have to be postponed unless we can access additional funding. Robert, her fiancé. The man my parents adored. The man they would do anything to protect. My mother fiddled with her pearl necklace nervously. And there's the vacation property in Hilton Head. The market shifted and, well, we're a little overextended. I almost laughed. Overextended? You mean you spent too much money and now you want me to pay for it? My father raised his voice, the mask slipping. We're not villains, Hannah. We're family. Families take care of each other. Rachel finally spoke, her voice small, uncertain. I need this too, Hannah. My divorce is final next month. Olivia promised me a position at Robert's company. I have the twins to think about. Her words sliced me open deeper than anything my family had said. She had been my best friend since we were kids. She knew what Liam meant to me. And now she was choosing them. I looked around the room, seeing clearly for the first time. These weren't people who loved me. These were people willing to sacrifice me to protect their money, their lifestyle, their comfort. If you don't sign, my father warned, we'll take more drastic measures. My mother's hand reached for mine, her voice low and manipulative. After everything we've done for you and Liam, can't you just trust us? I almost laughed again. What had they done? Sent birthday cards with $20 bills inside? Called once a month to ask shallow questions about our lives? You need to decide quickly, Olivia added, glancing at her watch. Robert's next project deadline is in 60 days. We can't afford delays. Their desperation reeked in the air. They didn't want Liam's legacy to help anyone. They wanted it to patch the holes in their own lives. I stood, gathering the documents into a neat pile and tucking them back into the folder. My voice was quiet but steady. I need time to think, Hannah. My father's voice snapped like a whip, sharp and commanding. Don't you dare walk away from this table. I didn't answer. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside into the cool drizzle. The door closed behind me with a final click. In my car. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, shaking from everything that had just unfolded. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Green. How did it go? I'm here if you need to talk. Before I could respond, another call came through. Eric's parents. I answered, my voice trembling. Hello? Hannah, dear, his mother said, her voice filled with genuine concern. We just heard about the funeral. We're so sorry we couldn't be there. We were still in Europe when we got the news. Her husband's voice broke in, thick with emotion. We love that boy so much. We can't believe he's gone. Their grief was real. Raw. Nothing like the polished performance I had just witnessed from my own family. After we hung up, I remembered something Eric once told me when setting up the trust. If you ever have questions, call Richard Donovan. He's the best trust attorney in the state. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope. I found his number in my contacts and dialed. A receptionist answered. Mr. Donovan's office. I need to speak with him immediately, I said, trying to steady my voice. It's about the Liam Parker Trust. That same afternoon, I sat in the polished office of Richard Donovan. Dark wood, leather chairs, shelves lined with books that smelled faintly of old paper and authority. I clutched the folder of documents so tightly that my knuckles were white. After 2 sleepless nights spent researching trust law online, I still barely understood what my rights were. All I knew was that my family was trying to take away the last piece of my son I had left. Richard rose from behind his desk, extending a hand. He was older than I expected, silver hair. Glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, but his handshake was firm, his eyes kind. Mrs. Parker, he said gently. I'm so sorry about your son. The words nearly undid me. I had heard condolences dozens of times since the funeral, but his tone carried something different. Real empathy, not obligation. Thank you, I whispered. I slid the folder across his desk. These are the documents I have about Liam's trust. Eric set it up before his company transferred him overseas. Richard opened the folder and began scanning. He paused occasionally, rereading certain sections with sharp focus. The silence stretched until I couldn't take it anymore. My family wants me to sign over control of the trust. I blurted out. They say I'm not mentally stable enough because of my grief. They didn't even come to Liam's funeral, but now they're pressuring me for his money. Richard looked up sharply. They didn't attend the funeral? No, I said, bitterness leaking into my voice. Olivia had her engagement party that day. My parents and Rachel went to that instead. He removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I remember when Eric set this trust up. He was very specific about his intentions. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder labeled with Eric's name. My breath caught. I hadn't expected him to still have files. Eric was exceptionally thorough, Richard explained. Explained and it still have files. Eric was exceptionally thorough, Richard explained. Richard explained, pulling out a notarized document. This is his statement of intent for the trust. He handed it to me. My eyes blurred as I recognized Eric's handwriting. This trust is to secure Liam's future, and if the worst should happen, to provide for Hannah, who has sacrificed everything for his care. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Even from across the world, Eric had seen what I couldn't bring myself to face. He had prepared for this. There's more, Richard said, turning his computer screen toward me. These are phone records from our office. Over the past year, we received multiple calls from your parents' landline and Olivia's cell phone. They were asking about trust provisions and beneficiary laws. My stomach dropped. They were researching this before Liam even passed? Richard nodded grimly. It appears so. But let me be absolutely clear. This trust has built-in protections. Eric made sure of it. No one but you can control it. Legally, they don't have a leg to stand on. For the first time in weeks, the crushing weight on my chest eased slightly. So, they can't take it? I asked cautiously. Not legally, Richard confirmed. But they might try other methods. Claiming you're mentally unfit, for example. That's the most common angle in situations like this. I thought of my mother's dismissive text at the funeral. Of Olivia's smug expression when she slid those documents across the table. Of my father's threats. I don't need to fight them for the trust. I realized aloud. I just need to prove their intentions, Richard nodded. Exactly. Do you have any documentation of their attempts? I pulled out my phone and showed him the text messages from my mother, dated the very day of the funeral. He scanned them, his brows furrowing. This is very strong evidence. Here's what I suggest. We set up a meeting with your family, but on your terms. A public place. That way they'll be less likely to cause a scene. We'll control the narrative from the start. 2 days later, I sat at a corner table in Riverside Coffee House, a manila envelope in front of me. The cafe buzzed with the usual afternoon crowd, students on laptops, couples chatting, the hiss of steaming milk. Just as Richard advised, I had chosen a busy, neutral space. Outside, Mrs. Green sat in her car, parked where she could see me through the window. She had insisted on coming, just in case. Richard was on standby for a call. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel completely alone. My family arrived together. Olivia in her oversized sunglasses leading the way. my parents trailing behind her like bodyguards, Rachel at the end of the line. They slid into seats across from me without ordering drinks, as if this was a business transaction they needed to finish quickly. Olivia reached immediately for the manila envelope. "So you've signed the papers? I knew you'd come around." I placed my hand firmly on the envelope. "Before we talk about papers, I need to ask you something. Why didn't any of you come to Liam's funeral?" My mother sighed dramatically. "Hannah, we've been through this. Olivia's engagement was planned months ago. We couldn't cancel everything. It was your grandson's funeral," I said quietly. "We grieved in our own way," my father said, glancing nervously at the nearby tables. "Everyone processes loss differently." I opened the envelope and slid several photos across the table, screenshots from Olivia's Instagram, timestamped during Liam's burial. Smiling faces. Champagne glasses clinking. A glittering ring flashing beneath party lights. "While I was lowering my son into the ground," I said, my voice steady, "you were drinking champagne." Olivia flushed bright red. "You're twisting things. That's not fair." I pulled out a second document, highlighted in yellow. The notarized trust terms. "No amendments without grantor consent." Eric made it clear. "This money is Liam's legacy for me. It cannot be touched." My father reached for the document, but I pulled it back. "I've already spoken with Richard Donovan. He has Eric's original statement of intent. The trust cannot be modified, transferred, or accessed by anyone but me." Olivia's polished facade cracked. "You don't deserve that money. You'll waste it." Her raised voice turned heads from nearby tables. My mother leaned in and hissed, "Lower your voice." "Why?" I asked, staring at Olivia. "Afraid people will hear how you skipped your nephew's funeral but want his college fund?" Olivia shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. We're trying to help you." "I don't need your kind of help," I said firmly, sliding the documents back into the envelope. "I will never sign anything. Ever." My father's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake, Hannah. We can make this very difficult for you." I stood, my chair scraping against the tile. "You already have. My entire life. But not anymore." I walked out without looking back. Outside, Mrs. Green rolled down her window, her eyes shining with pride. "You stood up to them," she said. "Good for you." My phone rang. "Richard, how did it go?" He asked the moment I answered. "Do we need to prepare for immediate legal action?" I described everything. The confrontation, Olivia's outburst, my refusal to sign. Richard listened carefully. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "They'll try again, but you've established boundaries. That's critical." As Mrs. Green drove me home, my phone buzzed again. A message from Eric's parents. "We'll fly in if you need us to testify about Eric's intentions. We're with you." For the first time since Liam's diagnosis, I felt something new rising through my grief. Not just sadness. Not just anger. Resolve. 3 days after the confrontation at Riverside Coffee House, I sat in Richard Donovan's office again. His mahogany desk was buried beneath neat piles of papers, medical records, and legal briefs. The room smelled faintly of leather and old books, like a place where strategies were built rather than just discussed. Richard tapped a legal brief with his pen. "They'll file for guardianship. That's their strongest angle. They'll claim your grief makes you mentally unfit to manage the trust, or even your own affairs." I swallowed hard. The thought of my parents trying to take away not only Liam's trust, but also control over my life made my skin crawl. "I've created a timeline," I said, spreading out pages across the desk. "Every single appointment, every treatment, every night I stayed at the hospital. I never missed one. Not even after Eric left for his assignment abroad." Richard raised his eyebrows, impressed. "That's excellent. It shows consistency." "And what about your parents, Olivia?" "Not once," I said, my voice steady though my chest ached. "They didn't visit him when he was diagnosed. Not during the 3 weeks in isolation after the bone marrow transplant failed. Not even when the doctors told us there was nothing more to do." "Document it all," Richard said firmly. "Every absence. Every dismissal. Every text where they downplayed his condition." I nodded, flipping through my phone. I had dozens of screenshots, messages where my mother told me I was overreacting, or where Olivia said, "Hospitals are depressing, he'll bounce back anyway." They minimized his illness, I said bitterly. But at the same time, they were researching his trust fund. They were planning ahead, waiting for him to die. Richard's voice softened. I know this is painful, Hannah, but their pattern is clear. They never cared about Liam's health, only about what came after. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to remember. I thought of those endless nights in the pediatric oncology ward, the beeping machines, the sharp smell of antiseptic. I thought of Liam clutching my hand when the nurse inserted another IV. I thought of how he whispered, "I'm okay." "Mom, even when he wasn't, this isn't just about proving you're competent," Richard said. "It's about proving they abandoned him. That they abandoned you. And now they're circling like vultures." I tightened my grip on my notebook. "Then that's exactly what we'll prove." Over the next hour, we worked tirelessly. I showed him my calendar, color-coded with every appointment, every transfusion, every consultation. Richard pulled out my financial statements, showing how carefully I had handled Liam's medical expenses despite my limited income. "You've been responsible," he said, "even under enormous stress." That's the opposite of what they'll try to claim. "I've also contacted his primary oncologist," I added. "And his teacher. Both are willing to give statements." "Perfect," Richard nodded. "And we'll get Mrs. Green's journals as well. A neutral third-party witness is powerful." I hesitated, then confessed, "I've been collecting screenshots too. Every time they dismissed his illness. Every time they made me feel like I was overreacting." Richard's expression hardened. "That's not just defense. That's motive. That shows premeditation. It strengthens your entire case." His words steadied me. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't just drowning in grief. I was building armor. Later that evening, Mrs. Green arrived at Richard's office with a stack of notebooks tied with string. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, her eyes blazing with quiet determination. "I wrote everything down," she said, placing the journals on Richard's desk. "Every day you spent at the hospital. Every night you sat by Liam's bed. Every meal I brought over because you refused to leave his side." Her voice shook slightly, but her gaze was fierce. "Melissa can say whatever lies she wants. But I documented the truth." She turned to me, taking my trembling hands in hers. "Don't let them make you doubt yourself, Hannah. That's exactly what they want." Her warmth seeped into me, calming my shaking fingers. For the first time, I realized what we were creating. Not just a defense. Not just a wall of evidence. But a monument. A monument to the truth of who had actually stood by Liam and who hadn't died by the end of the week. Richard's conference room wall had transformed into something almost overwhelming. A timeline stretched from floor to ceiling, lined with hospital records, financial documents, screenshots of texts, witness statements. It was a portrait of betrayal, carefully pieced together with dates and signatures and hard facts. Richard stood beside me, surveying the wall. "They'll try to file for emergency guardianship, claiming you're unstable. But we've anticipated every argument." He tapped one document, an affidavit from Eric's parents. "This alone makes their case weak." I stared at the wall, my throat tight. I never thought I'd need to prove I was a good mother. "You shouldn't have to," Richard said gently. "But people who want what isn't theirs will twist any narrative they can." As if to prove his point, my phone buzzed with a notification. A screenshot from Mrs. Green, Olivia's latest Facebook post. "Please keep our family in your prayers. Mental health struggles are real. Some people can't cope with loss the way others can." The comments overflowed with support. "Stay strong, Olivia. You're such a good sister. Family first." My stomach churned. "They're painting me as unstable online." "Classic strategy," Richard said grimly. "They can't win in court, so they're trying to win in the court of public opinion." Moments later, Richard's phone rang. He listened, his face darkening. "I see. Thank you for letting us know." He hung up and turned to me. "That was my contact at Memorial Hospital. Olivia accessed Liam's medical records using an outdated emergency contact form. It's a breach of confidentiality." The room tilted around me. "They'll twist everything. The times I questioned medication dosages, the nights I broke down in the hallway." "They're getting desperate," Richard said. "This proves how far they'll go." I gripped the table until my hands hurt. "What else are they doing behind my back?" Richard opened his laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. A moment later, he turned the screen toward me. LinkedIn messages, emails, my former colleagues at the marketing firm. Olivia had contacted them, asking questions about my emotional stability. "They're building a case against me on every front," I said, my voice low but fierce. They're trying to erase everything I did for Liam. Richard closed the laptop with a snap. Then we'll counter with defamation. This goes beyond the trust now. They're attacking your reputation. I thought of Liam's brave little face, his soft whisper. Don't worry, Mom. If he could face death without fear, I could face my family with the same strength. Let them try, I said quietly. We have something they don't. Richard raised an eyebrow. What's that? The truth. The next morning, a sharp knock rattled my front door. I opened it to find a sheriff standing there, his face neutral. He held out a heavy envelope. Mrs. Parker, you've been served. My fingers shook as I accepted it. The weight felt wrong, too heavy for paper, too light for what it carried. Inside, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. The heading made my stomach twist. Emergency petition for guardianship. They weren't just coming for Liam's money anymore. They wanted control of me. My phone rang. Richard's voice was calm but urgent. They filed, didn't they? Yes, I whispered. Don't panic. We knew this was coming. We're ready. I flipped through the affidavits. My heart dropped when I saw the signature Melissa. 3 full pages, describing every moment of weakness she had witnessed during Liam's illness. The nights I sobbed in hospital hallways. The days I forgot to eat. The morning I couldn't remember if I'd taken my own medication. They twisted everything, I whispered. She turned my worst moments into evidence against me. They're weaponizing your grief, Richard said. But we'll expose it. The next section highlighted my financial records. Overdraft fees, late payments. They ignored the context 18 months without steady income because I was caring for my dying son. The final blow came when I opened the local newspaper. My parents, sitting in their pristine living room, sorrow etched onto their faces. The headline made me nauseous. Family seeks help for grieving mother. My father's quote was bold across the page. This breaks our hearts, but we must protect her from herself. I pulled up Instagram. Olivia had posted a childhood photo of the two of us. Her caption, sometimes love means stepping in when someone you care about is struggling. Mental health awareness matters. Family first. The comments overflowed with sympathy. They've already convicted me in the court of public opinion, I said bitterly. Courts don't decide cases based on Instagram likes, Richard reminded me. We have affidavits from Liam's doctor, from his teachers, from your neighbors. Ethan's parents are flying in tomorrow. And we're filing a counterpetition with a restraining order. I touched the locket around my neck, feeling Liam's picture inside. What if it's not enough? It will be, Richard said with quiet certainty. You have the truth. And you're not alone. That night, as I was reviewing my testimony, my phone buzzed. Security camera notification, 9:48 p.m. Olivia stood on my porch, alone. I considered ignoring her, but something told me to face this. I activated the recording on my phone before unlatching the door chain slightly. What do you want? I asked through the crack. Her expression was soft, concerned. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it. Can I come in? Just to talk? No. Her shoulders sagged slightly. Hannah, please. This doesn't have to get ugly. Drop your opposition to the guardianship. Sign over control of the trust to me, and we'll withdraw the petition. My jaw tightened. You made it ugly when you skipped Liam's funeral. When you stole his medical records. She glanced at the security camera, realizing she was being recorded. Her voice dropped to a silky threat. If you don't cooperate, we'll destroy your reputation completely. Everyone will know how unstable you are. You'll never recover from this. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I think you should leave. Her mask slipped then. Rage flashed across her face. You think you deserve that money? You were always the burden. The disappointment. We carried you your whole life. Now it's time you did something for this family. Without another word, I closed the door in her face. My hands were steady. I immediately forwarded the recording to Richard. His reply came quickly. Perfect. Her mask slipped. This is exactly what we needed. Minutes later, Mrs. Green arrived with an overnight bag. I thought you could use some company, she said softly, setting a thermos of tea on my counter. I hugged her, the words caught in my throat. Tomorrow, she said firmly, we show them what real strength looks like. That night I sat in Liam's room. The glow-in-the-dark stars we had stuck to the ceiling still faintly glowed. I held his favorite stuffed dinosaur, pressing it against my heart. Tomorrow is for you, buddy, I whispered into the quiet. For your legacy. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel fear. I felt ready. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper. The atmosphere was heavy, almost like a church service where everyone already knew the sermon would hurt. I walked inside flanked by Richard Donovan, Mrs. Green, and Eric's parents. My heart pounded, but my head was held high. For 48 hours I had lived with the weight of that guardianship petition. Today I would face it. Across the room, my parents, Olivia and Melissa, sat together at the petitioner's table. They looked rehearsed faces arranged in practiced sorrow, concern drawn neatly into the lines of their expressions. Olivia even wore muted colors, a sharp contrast to her usual glitter. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The honorable judge." Marion Peabody swept into the room, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her glasses perched low on her nose. Her gaze was sharp, scanning the room like she could slice through lies with a glance. "These are serious allegations," she said firmly. "I expect evidence, not theatrics." The petitioner's lawyer, Mr. Harrington, rose. His suit was expensive, his posture confident. "Your Honor, this case is about a family desperately trying to help their daughter and sister. Miss Hannah Parker has exhibited troubling behaviors since her son's death, erratic financial choices, isolation, refusal to accept help." My fists clenched under the table. Melissa was called first. She avoided my eyes as she testified. "Hannah changed during Liam's illness. She became obsessive, paranoid. She'd call me at 3 a.m, hysterical. I was worried for her mental state. Her words stung like acid. I remembered those nights, Liam burning with fever, me terrified he wouldn't make it until morning. I had reached out to a friend for comfort. And now that friend was painting me as unstable. Next, my mother took the stand. Her performance could have won awards. She dabbed at tears, her voice trembling. "We are heartbroken. Watching our daughter self-destruct has been unbearable. This isn't about money. It's about protecting her." The judge's expression softened slightly, and a wave of panic shot through me. She was buying it. Then it was Richard's turn. He rose with calm authority. "Your Honor, what we are witnessing is not concern. It is calculation." His voice carried across the courtroom, steady and deliberate. "Miss Parker has not self-destructed. She has been systematically targeted by family members who abandoned her during her son's illness but appeared the moment they learned of his trust fund." He handed over binders filled with hospital records, financial statements, and affidavits. "These documents show Hannah never missed a single appointment. She researched treatments, managed his care responsibly, and made every decision in consultation with doctors." He called the hospital records administrator, Catherine Winters, who confirmed Olivia had accessed Liam's medical files without authorization. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Olivia shifted in her seat, her composure faltering. Then Mrs. Green took the stand. Her voice was steady, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "I watched Hannah care for that boy every day. She never once faltered. She gave him everything she had, her time, her strength, her love. She didn't collapse. She fought." Eric's father testified next. His voice broke with emotion. "My son created that trust with clear instructions. If Liam passed, everything went to Hannah. She sacrificed her career, her savings, everything. No one is more deserving to honor Liam's legacy." Judge Peabody's expression sharpened. She looked less sympathetic to my family now. Richard nodded toward me, and I understood. It was time. He played the recording from the night before. Olivia's voice filled the room, dripping with venom. "We'll destroy your reputation completely. Everyone will know how unstable you are. You were always the burden." The disappointment, gasps echoed through the courtroom. My parents froze. Melissa stared at the floor. Then Richard played the audio from the coffee shop meeting. My family's voices were clear. "Once the guardianship is approved, we can use the money however we want." The silence afterward was deafening. The judge called for a recess. When she returned, her expression was granite. "I have reviewed all evidence and testimony," she said. "This court finds no basis for the guardianship petition. In fact, I see a coordinated attempt to exploit a grieving mother for financial gain." My family's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Olivia opened her mouth to protest, but the judge raised a hand sharply. "Miss Walker, remain silent. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into possible perjury and a restraining order prohibiting all petitioners from contacting Hannah Parker." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. My parents' faces crumbled. Olivia's cheeks burned crimson. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing for her anymore. The judge turned to me. "Miss Parker, you have shown remarkable strength and clarity during unimaginable loss. Your son would be proud. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then Richard touched my arm gently. You did it, Hannah. The system worked today. As we left the courtroom, Eric's mother whispered through her tears, You honored him. You honored Liam. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones were shoved in my face. A month ago, I would have ducked my head. But today I stopped. Mrs. Parker, one called, How do you feel about the ruling? I lifted my chin, my voice steady. Today, justice was done for my son. His legacy is safe. Flashes went off, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I felt like I was stepping into the light instead of drowning in the dark. 1 week later, I sat in the office of a financial advisor, reviewing investment options. These plans will sustain funding for the scholarship program while preserving the principal, he explained. I studied the numbers carefully. The words no longer blurred together like a foreign language. The Pediatric Hematology Fellowship must be fully funded. That's non-negotiable, he nodded. Of course. And the restraining order? I asked, holding firm. They can't come within 1,000 feet of you. I exhaled slowly. For once, their shadow wasn't hanging over me. The local paper had run a headline. Mother vindicated in trust battle. Support poured in, calls, letters, neighbors dropping off food. Even Olivia's fiancé had called to apologize before ending their engagement. My parents faced perjury charges. Melissa lost her job after recordings of her testimony circulated. For once, consequences had landed where they belonged. When I left the advisor's office, Mrs. Green was waiting in her old Buick, window rolled down. All set? She asked. All set, I said, sliding into the seat. She patted my hand as she drove. I knew you could do this. From the moment you placed that action figure on his grave, I knew you would fight for him. That night I slept peacefully for the first time in months. No nightmares of hospital hallways. Just a dream of Liam running through a field. Just a dream of Liam running through a field, healthy and laughing. 6 months later, I stood in the pediatric blood disorder unit, where Liam had spent so many days. The walls were newly painted with bright underwater scenes, smiling dolphins, colorful coral reefs. A plaque by the nurses' station read, The Liam Parker Memorial Wing. A young nurse approached, her eyes shining. I'm Jennifer Adams, the first Liam Parker scholar. I can't thank you enough. This fellowship lets me specialize in pediatric hematology. He would have been thrilled, I said, smiling through tears. He wanted to be a doctor himself someday. The foundation had already made an impact. Families received housing assistance. Nurses were trained. Research was funded. You've created something beautiful out of something tragic, Eric's mother told me during one of her visits. She and her husband had become advocates for grandparents. Supporting sick children. Mrs. Green now served as the foundation's volunteer coordinator, organizing meals and transportation for families. Richard handled the legal side pro bono. Family, not the one I was born into, but the one I had chosen. 1 year to the day after Liam's funeral, I returned to the cemetery. The morning sun warmed the granite headstone. Fresh flowers in my hand, I traced his name with my fingers. A woman approached with a little girl about 7. Are you Hannah Parker? She asked softly. I nodded. I'm Sarah Mitchell. This is my daughter, Emma. She was diagnosed with the same condition as your son last year. The specialist funded by your scholarship program saved her life. Emma stepped forward shyly. Thank you for helping me get better. I knelt to her level, my heart swelling. You're welcome, sweetheart. As they walked away, I pulled out Liam's old action figure, the one I had buried with him but later retrieved. I placed it against his headstone. I kept my promise, I whispered. Your legacy is safe, and it's growing stronger every day. Standing there, I felt something profound. Sometimes betrayal breaks you, but sometimes it transforms you into someone stronger than you ever believed possible. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living a life that honored Liam's courage, and I knew, without a doubt, he would be proud. 6 months had passed since the courtroom battle, but the memory of that day still felt fresh. The day Judge Peabody had thrown out my family's petition and protected Liam's trust. The day I finally saw my parents, my sister, and even Melissa for who they truly were. But now, my life looked different. The Liam Parker Foundation had officially launched. What started as an idea in Richard Donovan's office had grown into something tangible, something real. The foundation provided emergency housing for families with children in treatment, offered grants for specialized nurses, and funded research into rare pediatric blood disorders. Every board meeting brought fresh ideas. Richard oversaw the legal side pro bono, keeping everything airtight. Mrs. Green coordinated volunteers, making sure no parent ever went through what I had gone through alone. Eric's parents ran the advocacy program for grandparents, connecting families to resources they never knew existed. And me? I wasn't just the grieving mother anymore. I was the woman standing at the front of the room, speaking with confidence, making decisions, creating change. The first time I gave a talk at a support group for parents, my hands shook. But as I looked into their tired, fearful faces, I saw myself from a year ago, lost, scared, drowning. And I realized they didn't need perfection. They needed honesty. The first step, I told them, my voice steadying as I spoke, is believing you can do this. The second is knowing you don't have to do it alone. Not long after, the foundation funded a project that transformed the entire pediatric blood disorder unit. Bright murals covered the walls, replacing sterile white with underwater worlds. Dolphins leapt, fish swam, coral glowed. Liam would have loved it. The dedication ceremony brought me to tears. A polished plaque now hung near the nurses' station. The Liam Parker Memorial Wing. Children's laughter echoed down the halls, filling a space once haunted by fear. And in those moments I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just holding on to Liam's memory. I was building something with it. 1 year to the day after Liam's funeral, I found myself back at the cemetery. The morning sun was warm, and the grass shimmered with dew. I carried a bouquet of fresh flowers, the kind Liam had always liked, bright yellow sunflowers. I knelt by his headstone, tracing the carved letters of his name with my fingers. My heart still ached, but the sharp edges of grief had softened. As I sat there, a soft voice called out, "Excuse me, are you Hannah Parker?" I turned to see a woman approaching, holding the hand of a little girl who looked about 7. "Yes," I said, standing. The woman smiled through tears. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. This is my daughter, Emma. She was diagnosed with the same blood disorder as your son last year. The specialist funded by your scholarship program found a treatment protocol that worked. She's healthy now, and it's because of Liam's legacy." Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. "Thank you for helping me get better." Tears blurred my vision as I crouched down to her level. "You're so brave, Emma. I'm proud of you." They left after a few minutes, but their presence lingered. That little girl's smile was proof that Liam's life, short as it was, had changed others. I reached into my pocket and pulled out his old action figure, the same one I had once placed on his coffin. The cemetery worker had quietly returned it to me afterward. Sensing my regret at letting it go. I placed it gently against the headstone. "I kept my promise, buddy. Your legacy is safe, and it's growing stronger every day." Looking back now, I understood something I hadn't a year ago. Family isn't always the one you're born into. My parents, my sister, even Melissa, they had shown me what betrayal looked like. But Mrs. Green, Richard, Eric's parents, they showed me what love and loyalty really mean. Standing at Liam's grave, I realized I wasn't the same woman who once felt utterly abandoned there. Betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also rebuilt me into someone stronger. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living in a way that honored everything Liam had taught me about courage, love, and resilience. A few months later, I stood at a podium at a medical conference. The foundation's banner displayed proudly behind me. Doctors, nurses, researchers, and parents filled the room. My palms were damp, but my voice was steady as I spoke. My son, Liam, wanted to be a doctor when he grew up. He used to say, "I'll fix kids like me someday." He never got that chance. But through this foundation, we are making sure his dream continues. The room was silent, listening. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful not because of me, but because of him. When the applause came, it was thunderous. Afterward, a young nurse approached me. "I just received the Liam Parker Scholarship," she said, eyes shining. "Because of your son, I can train in pediatric hematology. I'll dedicate my career to kids like him." I smiled through tears. That's all he ever wanted. The seasons turned. Life continued. The foundation grew. Every time a family was housed near a hospital, every time a child received specialized care, Every time research made a breakthrough, I felt Liam close by. There were hard days, of course. Days when I missed his laugh so much it felt like I couldn't breathe. Nights when I stared at his photo and ached for just one more hug, but grief no longer controlled me. It walked beside me, a quiet reminder of what I had lost, but also of why I had to keep moving forward. One evening, I sat in Liam's old room, which I had finally transformed into a home office for the foundation. His glow-in-the-dark stars were still on the ceiling, though, and his stuffed dinosaur sat proudly on the shelf. I touched the photo on my desk, his school picture, taken just before he got sick. His smile was wide, his eyes bright with determination. "You did it, buddy," I whispered. "You're still helping kids. You're still changing lives." And in that moment, I felt peace. I know now that betrayal doesn't get the last word. Love does. Courage does. Legacy does. My parents, Olivia and Melissa, lost everything they thought they'd gain. But me, I gained something greater than money could ever buy. A community. A mission. A renewed strength I never believed I had. And most importantly, a way to keep Liam alive in this world. Not through grief, but through hope. As I walked away from his grave that day, the morning sun warmed my face, and I realized something profound. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals lead to the most powerful transformations. I wasn't just the mother who lost her son anymore. I was the mother who built his legacy. And I knew wherever he was, Liam Parker was proud of me.